Last week's episode, we talked about awareness. We talked about the difference between internal awareness, what's happening inside you, and external awareness, what actually is happening around you. We talked about the compulsive state versus the conscious state, about the gap between stimulus and response, and how that gap is where your freedom lives. I got a lot of feedback on that one, people resonating with it. Some people saying I felt called out, and then a few people saying, hey, great concept, but how do I actually do it? Well, for the last group, this episode is for you because knowing an awareness matters and knowing how to build it are two completely different things. And I don't want to give you a philosophy without practice. That's not how I coach, and that's not how this show works. So today, we're going practical. We're going to go over 5 specific practices for building real, usable awareness in your leadership, in your business, and in your life. Not theory, but reps. So, welcome to Mind Your Business. I'm Steve Wagner, and let's get to it. Awareness is a skill and not a gift. Before we get into the 5 practices, I want to say something that I think is really important. Awareness is not a personality trait. It's not something you either have or you don't. It's not reserved for people who are naturally introspective or spiritually inclined, or who grew up in households where feelings were discussed at the dinner table. Awareness is a skill, and skills are built through deliberate practice, repeated over time in the presence of a little discomfort. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men who ever lived, commanded armies, emperor of Rome, practice awareness every single morning before the day started. He called it his morning meditation. We called it meditations today because someone actually saved all of his journals. The man did not assume he'd wake up self-aware. He worked at it every day. Awareness is not a gift you're born with. It's a discipline you build, one deliberate practice at a time. So here are the 5. Each one is simple. None of them are easy. All of them are work. The first practice is stillness. And I know the word makes some of you uncomfortable. It's made me uncomfortable for a long time. It sounds soft. It sounds like something you do at a yoga retreat, not in a boardroom. But let me reframe it for you, because I think the resistance to stillness is actually a symptom of why you need it. Most of us are addicted to input, noise in, noise out, all day long. Phone, meetings, notification, podcasts, news feeds. We have engineered a life that almost never requires us just to stop. And in doing so, we have completely lost the ability to hear ourselves think. Stillness is not emptying your mind. That's actually a myth. Stillness is creating a quiet enough container that you can actually notice what's already in your mind. The anxious thought you've been running from, the conviction that keeps resurfacing, the tension in your chest that you've been too busy to name. In Psalms 46, verse 10, it goes, "Be still and know that I am God." Now, this isn't a passive instruction. It's an invitation to stop performing and start perceiving. The practice is simple. Carve out 5 minutes, just 5, somewhere in your day where you can do nothing. No phone, no podcasts, no planning, just noticing. Notice your breath. Notice what thoughts come up. Notice what your body is carrying. You're not solving anything. You're just observing. Over time, this is built what I call internal signal-to-noise ratio. You start to hear the important stuff more clearly because you've created space for it to surface. 5 minutes sounds impossible. You're exactly the person who needs it most. So start with 2, but start. Now, tomorrow morning, before you check your phone, sit quietly for 5 minutes. No agenda, just notice what's already present in your mind and body before the day pours in. The second practice was reflection. Now, I want to make this distinction here that I think changes everything. Most people, when they're journal or debrief, they write about what happened. The meeting ran long, client said this, the deal fell through, team got it done. That's a log. That's a record. That's not a reflection. Reflection asks a different set of questions. Not just what happened, but what did I feel during it? What did I believe in that moment? What story was I telling myself? What assumption was I operating from? Events are the surface. Reflection digs below the surface to find the meaning you've assigned. And that's where the real data is. Here's why it matters. The same event can produce completely different responses in two different people. Not because of the event, but because the meaning each person assigned to it. One person loses a big client and thinks, I need to improve my process. Another loses that same client and thinks, I'm not cut out for this. Same event, entirely different internal narrative. Reflection lets you examine that narrative. And when you can examine it, you can change it, correct it, and choose a better one. In Proverbs 4:23, again, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. You cannot guard what you haven't examined, and reflection is that examination. Now, here are 3 questions I encourage you to end every workday with. What happened today that had an emotional charge for me, positive or negative? What did I believe in that moment that drove my response? And is belief accurate? Is it serving me? That's it. 10 minutes, but 10 honest minutes will do more for your self-awareness than a year of surface level journaling. Now, tonight, pick one moment from your day that had an emotional charge, frustration, pride, anxiety, conflict. Write what happened, what did I feel, and what did I believe? And is that belief true? Now, the third practice is feedback. The third practice is the one most people skip, and it's the one that might deliver the most immediate return, and that's feedback, specifically asking trusted people how you come across. And then, this is the hard part, listening without defending. Here's the challenge of self-awareness. It has a structural problem. You cannot fully see yourself from the inside. You have blind spots, by definition, invisible to you. You can do all the journaling and stillness in the world and still miss the thing that everyone around you sees clearly, which means at some point, awareness has to come from the outside in. Research on self-awareness consistently shows that people who believe they are highly self-aware are often the least accurate self-assessors. The very confidence in their knowledge prevents them from seeing what others see. Now, I'm not talking about throwing yourself open to everyone's opinion. Not everyone's feedback is equally valuable. You want to go to trusted people, people you know, and people who care about you, and will tell you the truth without agenda. And you have to ask specifically, how do I come across when I'm under pressure? What do I do that might be getting in my own way? Is there anything I consistently do that lands differently than I intended? Then, and this is critical, you listen. Not to rebut, not to explain, not to say, yeah, but here's the context. Just hear it. Because the moment you start defending, you've just shut the door. And the person in front of you just learned that the honest feedback isn't safe with you, and you won't ever hear it again. Feedback is the mirror. Most people flinch before actually they look. The ones who stay with it are the ones who grow. In Proverbs 12:15, it says, the way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. That's just not a moral statement. That's a description of how growth works. Wise leaders are not the ones who have it all figured out. They're the ones who stay teachable. Now, this week, ask one trusted person one specific question. Is there something I do consistently that might be landing differently than I intend? Then listen, take notes, thank them, and you don't have to explain. Now, the fourth practice is present. Fourth practice might be the most counter-cultural thing I asked anyone to do. In a world that rewards multitasking and efficiency, this feels almost radical. Presence. When talking to someone, focus entirely on them for 60 seconds. No agenda, no phone, no mentally drafting your response while they're still talking, just presence. Now, 60 seconds sounds easy. Try it. Actually, try it in your next meaningful conversation and see how long it takes you before your mind drifts to what you want to say or what you need to do after this, or whether they're going to the point fast enough. We have trained ourselves out of presence. We've optimized for speed and efficiency to the point that we've forgotten how to be with somebody. And here's what that costs us as leaders. Information, real, unfiltered, human information. Because people, your team, your clients, your kids, your spouse, they don't share full truth with someone who isn't paying attention. They give you the surface version, the safe version, the version that takes 30 seconds and doesn't require you to actually slow down. But when someone feels generally seen and heard, they give you something different. They tell you what's actually going on. Presence is not a soft skill. It's an intelligence gathering strategy. The leader who is fully present knows things others don't. That's not incidental. That's the model of leadership that says the person in front of me is worth my full attention right now. As a practical tool, when you enter a conversation, make one rule for yourself. No phone on the table, not face down, not nearby, just there. And in the first 60 seconds, ask one real question and actually listen to the answer before you say anything else. 60 seconds. That's the entry point. But you'll find in that presence, once you practice it, starts to expand. It becomes a posture, not a technique. In your next one-to-one conversation today, put your phone away. No agenda for the first 60 seconds, and ask one real question. And notice what you learn that you wouldn't have learned otherwise. The fifth practice is the one I love because it sounds simple, but it will quietly rewire the way you think you let it. Replace judgment with curiosity. Specifically, when you notice yourself judging a person, a situation, result, even yourself, swap judgment for the phrase, "That's interesting." Let me explain why that's powerful. Judgment is a closed door. The moment you judge something, they're being difficult. This is a waste of time. I'm not good at this. You stop seeing it. You've labeled it and filed it away. Nothing new can come in. Curiosity is an open door. That's interesting. Why is that person being difficult right now? What's underneath that? What am I missing? Or, this is an uncomfortable one. That's interesting that I'm having such a strong reaction to this. What does this tell me about me? Judgment feels productive because it feels decisive, but in most cases, premature judgment is just a way to stop thinking. Curiosity keeps that thinking open, and awareness lives in the open. This is an awareness practice because judgment is often where our blind spots hide. We judge quickly the things that trigger us, and we trigger quickly on the things that reflect something we haven't worked through in ourselves. So when you swap judgment for curiosity, you're not just being more open to others, you're opening a window into yourself. Epictetus taught that our distress is never caused by what happens to us, only by our interpretation of what happens. Curiosity is the practice of holding your interpretation loosely, of saying, I have a view here, but I may not be the only view, and it may not even be the right view. This takes some humility, and in humility, ironically, is one of the highest performing traits of great leaders. Not because it makes them passive, but because it keeps them accurate. Proverbs 18, verse 2, it says, "A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion." The curious leader seeks to understand. The judgmental leader seeks to be right. Now, one more layer on this. Try applying curiosity to yourself. The next time you underperform, make a mistake, or react in a way you're not proud of, instead of self-criticism or self-defense, try, "That's interesting. What was actually going on with me in that moment?" You will learn more from that question than from any amount of self-flagellation. Today, catch yourself in mid-judgment of a person, a situation, or of yourself, and say out loud or in your head, "That's interesting." Then ask one follow-up question and see where that takes you. Well, let's bring these 5 together before we close. Stillness, reflection, feedback, presence, curiosity. None of these are complicated. All of them require something most people are unwilling to give. Intentional, regular, uncomfortable attention to what's happening inside themselves. But here's what I want you to understand about these practices collectively. They compound. Just like financial interest compounds over time, self-awareness compounds over practice. Each rep makes the next rep easier. Each insight opens a door to a deeper one. Each relationship deepened by the presence creates more relational data. Each judgment swapped for curiosity expands what you're able to see. The leader who commits to this work for 1 year will barely recognize the blind spots of 12 months ago, not because they become perfect, but because they become honest. And honest, self-aware leaders make better decisions, build more trusting teams, and create more sustainable results than talented leaders who have never learned to see themselves clearly. You cannot lead others further than you've been willing to go yourself. Awareness is the distance between who you are and who you're becoming. I'll close with something from the 1 Corinthians, not the wedding passage, though powerful, but the verse right after it, verse 12. "For now we see through a glass, darkly, but then face to face, now I know in part, but then I shall know even as I am known. We see dimly, all of us. The best leaders I know are not ones who claim to see clearly. They're the ones who know they see dimly and commit to wiping that glass every single day. That's what these 5 practices are. Not perfection, just daily work of wiping that glass. So do the work, mind your business, and I'll see you next time. And keep your mindset strong.